Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com, and today I'm going to be going over a hand from a $1,000 buy-in World Series of Poker event. And this is a dicey spot. So we have Queen Ten of Spades playing a pretty deep stacked from early position. There is a tight aggressive player in the big blind with only 50 big blinds, but in general I'm raising Jack 10 suited, 8-7 suited, Queen 10 suited, King 10 suited, Ace 10 suited, from pretty much every position when we're playing pretty deep stacked, unless I'm playing against very, very tough opponents and I expect to be getting re-raised a lot. So in a typical $1,000 buy-in World Series poker event, I am going to be raising this basically every time. So let's make a raise. I would usually make it a little bit deeper than this if we are playing 100 big blinds deep or more. I think I prefer a 600 chip raise, but it doesn't really matter all that much. So I do raise, and only a probably tight aggressive player 3-bets to 1,450 from the big blind. So there are a few things happening in this scenario. First, our opponent's making it pretty small. And you may say, well, shouldn't you make it 3 times the last bet when you re-raise? And while that is normally true when you're in position, our opponent's out of position. So you have to always ask, what am I offering my opponents? And right here, I have to put in 1,000 chips to try to win 3,250, so I only need to realize 30% equity in position, which is kind of difficult not to do, right? Queen 10 suited certainly should realize 30% equity, unless our opponent has like exactly aces, kings, queens, and ace king. And even then, it still may be okay because we are in position. So when you see someone re-raise rather small from out of position, alarm bells should go off. And that said, some people don't realize they're making it small in this spot. Some people just think, oh, 3 times re-raise, let's re-raise. But if your opponent is a good thinking player, or not necessarily a good player, but if they are a thinking player, you may find that they use smaller sizings with only a very premium range, which makes their life easy. That said, I don't know that about this opponent because this is early in a $1,000 buy-in World Series event, so who knows what the opponent's doing. So I think folding and calling are both fine. I typically like seeing flops in position against players who may or may not be making errors, because if they make errors either by being too loose or too tight, either way, as long as I play closer to fundamentally sound than they do, we're going to make money. And I like making money. So let's call. There is no merit in re-raising or shoving. I think that would be a big mistake against someone who you think is probably playing pretty tight and aggressive. So flop comes 10-3-2, 2 diamonds. Our opponent bets 1,400, and at this point our hand is just way too good to fold, so folding's out of the question. The only question is, should we call or raise? And it's kind of a neat spot, right? If I raise small, that's probably not so bad because our opponent may stick around with any pair, which is fine because we have any pair in relatively bad shape. But if the opponent's range is only over pairs and better, then that's not going to work out so well for me, right? Because I'm actually in pretty bad shape against the over pairs and better. I could go all in. If I go all in, though, our opponent's probably going to call with mostly hands that beat me. So that's not such an attractive option. So I think the only play that makes sense is to call. If I do raise small, by the way, I'm not planning on folding if our opponent shoves, because then I'll be getting amazing pot odds, right? Like, let's say I make it 3,200, and our opponent goes all in for 8,000 total, give or take. Then we just need to put in like 5,000 more to win a total of 20. So clearly we're going to win 25% of the time on average, so we're not folding if we do raise. I think a better play, though, is to call and see what develops. One thing you're going to find a lot of generally straightforward players do is they will bet the flop with all of their range, but then they will check the turn with most of their marginal stuff and just keep betting with their very good hands. All players will not do that, of course. Some people will just keep bluffing with ace-king and ace-queen in the spot, or whatever other bluffs they have. But in general, I think, especially if you don't think your opponents are just trying to mindlessly blast off, I definitely like the idea of calling and seeing what develops. So we do call, turns of 4 diamonds, and now our opponent goes all in for a little bit more than the size of the pot, which is a bummer. Look, you all know me. I typically don't fold top pair all that often, but in scenarios like this, our opponent's range is almost certainly over pairs, and then maybe ace king with a diamond or ace queen with a diamond. Now, the question is, would our opponent do this with something like the ace of spades, queen of diamonds, or ace of spades, king of diamonds? Some people will, some people won't, right? Most people will always do this with ace of diamonds, king, or ace of diamonds, queen. So it's a close spot. We need to win about 35% of the time here, and I think this is probably close because we're in good shape against the draws. Not amazing shape, but good shape against Ace King. Our opponent has how many outs? They have 9 flush outs, roughly. Is that right? 9 plus 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 outs total. Maybe 14 outs total, something like that. They have plenty of outs. 14 outs total. One more card means they're going to win. Let's call it 25% of the time for simplicity. So, we're in good shape against that, but we're not loving it. What about against overpairs, though? In that scenario, we only have 5 outs, so we're only going to win like 10% of the time. So if it is, imagine, 50-50 between our opponent having overpairs and the ace of diamonds. If it is 50-50, which is probably not, but if it is 50-50, we're going to win 10% of the time, half the time, and we're going to win 75% of the time, half the time. If you average those, it's going to come out to us winning, 35% of the time on average, which is right at break even. But I'm not even sure our opponent will jam here with the ace of diamonds. Some people will, some people won't. But I do know that most players in our opponent's shoes will just jam it all in with overpairs. And for that reason, I'm pretty sure overpairs are in their range all the time. Draws may or may not be in their range. So maybe it's even weighted a little bit more towards the premium hands. Also, you have to remember, of ace of diamonds, king, there's only 4 combinations of those, whereas there are 6 combinations of aces and kings and jacks, right? So that's 18 of those. So our opponent should have more overpairs in this spot than ace of diamonds, king, or ace of diamonds, queen. So, also our opponent could just have a flush. I don't think our opponent's going to have a flush too often playing in this manner, but some people will. Like ace, king, and diamonds, right? I think it'd be a very bad way to play it, but some people do play it this way. So all of that taken into consideration, we probably have like 25% equity here on average. The only time we can justify calling is if we just know our opponent doesn't do this with overpairs. But there's just no way we can know that. So for that reason, I think I prefer a fold with the top pair. Man, I hate folding top pair. But that is what I did this time, and I do think it is the right play. It's always tough whenever you're playing these small stakes World Series events because some people really are just looking to get their stack in as fast as they possibly can. But if you've been playing for a little while and can kind of make a read that your opponent is on the tighter side or the more straightforward side, you should be looking to overfold against them. You should be folding more often than a game theory optimal strategy may dictate. And so for that reason, I think this is just a pretty solid fold you should be making on a regular basis. And the reason is because these players will often make it very obvious to you when they have marginal hands, which just gives you all of the small and medium pots when they don't have anything. So you really don't want to be calling off for all of your money in break-even spots, or maybe even slightly positive spots, because whenever you fail, when you lose, you're just out of the tournament and you have no more opportunities to gather chips. So have discipline and don't give your stack away. So that's going to be it for today. If you enjoyed this video, definitely check out pokercoaching.com where you can get a completely free trial where I will break down situations like this and explain how I will play my whole range in this scenario. And you'll see that if you don't raise the flop with the flush draws, which I certainly wouldn't, and if you don't raise the flop with sets, which I certainly wouldn't, you're actually kind of protected here because you actually have a pretty decent amount of strong hands in this scenario that can justify calling off. And of course, if I had a diamond here, I would be way more inclined to call off because then you have some outs even when you happen to be behind. So this just happens to be one of those hands that you need to make a nitty fold with. And the pokercoaching.com homework challenges will explain how to play every hand in your range so that you make sure you're not just like drastically overfolding here. So that's going to be it for today. Thanks again to Poker News for hosting these videos. Hope you enjoyed it. Good luck in your games, have fun, and I will talk to you next week.